There's something different about a confession tape. It's not a public statement. It's not made for TV. It's usually just a voice on a recorder. The killer has been caught. The game is over. There's nothing left to hide. And in that quiet room, off with just a detective and a recorder, they start to speak. What comes out isn't always remorse. Sometimes it's pride. Sometimes confusion. And sometimes a strange attempt at self-analysis. These tapes are some of the most authentic glimpses we'll ever get into the mind of a serial killer. No courtroom pressure, no audience, just their words, their tone, their choice of language, and the weight of what they've done. Welcome back to Prison Stories. In this video, we'll listen to some of the most disturbing and revealing confession tapes ever recorded, each one offering a chilling look inside a killer's mind. When police finally caught Jeffrey Dahmer, they didn't need to drag the truth out of him. He gave it freely. In the hours and days that followed his arrest, Dahmer sat down with investigators and described, in disturbing detail, how he killed 17 men and boys. But what stood out the most was how calm he was.
It's not easy to talk about. It's something that I've kept buried within myself for many years, and it's like trying to pull up a 2-ton stone out of a well.
There was no panic, no anger, no attempt to deny or justify. Just a flat, cold recounting of every step, from seduction to murder, dismemberment, and even cannibalism. According to him, everything started in his mind long before he acted. The thoughts consumed him until fantasy became reality.
Fascinating, and then eventually it seemed the fantasies came to be what triggered it all. I wish I could give you a good, straightforward answer on that. If there's any area that is to really blame, it's my own twisted thinking. I haven't been thinking normally for years.
The details he gave were horrific. He admitted to drilling holes into victims' skulls and pouring acid in, attempting to create a submissive zombie, someone who would never leave him. The reasoning was twisted, but it was spoken so casually that it was almost worse than if he'd screamed it.
I started dismembering them and everything. There's something really, I remember cutting the legs off and then the arms and the head.
At least he understood. His thinking was twisted, and he took all the blame. Dahmer seemed to understand the gravity of what he'd done. He admitted he should die for his crimes. And yet, there was no visible remorse, no breakdown. Just a man talking like he was describing someone else's life. And maybe in his own mind, he was
My companionship, someone to spend the night with and have complete control over, and to be able to do with as I please. Something real instead of fake like the mannequin. That was my fantasy.
But not every killer confesses with such calm clarity. Some hold their secrets like trophies, only revealing them on their own terms. Ted Bundy didn't confess the way most killers do. He didn't sit down and spill the truth with guilt or remorse. Instead, Bundy played games with authorities for years. He was denying all charges even after receiving death sentences. It was only days before his execution that he confessed, and that too, to save his life.
I am looking for an opportunity to tell the story as best I can in the way that makes sense to me and the way that'll help not just you or the families, but that's very important, but also to help my own family. You see,
In many of his recordings, instead of simply telling truth, Bundy never stopped manipulating and was just beating about the bush instead of giving real information. To Bundy, it wasn't confession. It was a performance. Even near the end, on death row, when time was running out, Bundy gave only enough to try and save himself.
It was I knocked her unconscious with the crowbar.
Where do you have that?
By the car.
Outside?
Outside and back of the car. And then there were some handcuffs there, along with the crowbar.
Along with what?
The crowbar. And
But while confessing, Bundy carefully crafted his words, dragging conversation here and there, giving his perspectives, and even trying to evade the real subject.
not that she was unconscious, but she was very much alive. One of the things that makes it among the things that makes it difficult is that at this point she was quite lucid, talking about things, about some. It's funny. It's not funny, but it's odd the kinds of things people say under those circumstances.
His confession lacks real remorse somehow. Bundy wanted to be remembered as brilliant, misunderstood, and complex. He didn't confess to cleanse a soul. He confessed to control the narrative.
Write it down, or I can whisper it to you, or whatever. I just don't want the police getting any kind of names at this point.
Dennis Rader, known as BTK, was another typical serial killer. His confession wasn't born out of desperation or guilt, but rather from a need for control. For years, Rader taunted police and the public with cryptic letters, mocking their inability to catch him. He seemed to revel in the fear he caused, the confusion he left behind. His victims were nothing more than pawns in his twisted game.
Something drove me to do this. Normal people just don't do this.
Or Josephine, and basically broke into the house, or didn't break into the house, but when they came out of the house, I came in and confronted the family, and then we went from there.
All right,
His confession wasn't just about the murders. Rader detailed his fantasies, the planning, and how he meticulously stalked his victims before striking. What's chilling is that even when he spoke of the killings, there was no remorse, just a detached recounting of each act. For him, the murders were more about fulfilling a need within himself than about the victim.
The two younger kids were in the house. I didn't realize Mr. Otero was going to be there.
All right. How did you get into the house, Mr. Rader?
I came through the back door, cut the phone lines, waited at the back door, had reservations about even going or just walking away, but pretty soon the door opened and I was in.
What makes Rader even more unsettling is his calm demeanor during his confessions. Unlike Bundy, who spoke to manipulate or try to tone it down, Rader's confession was simply matter of fact. He saw nothing wrong with what he did. In his mind, he was a puppet master pulling strings, and every murder was just a piece of the larger game.
They had 4 members.
All right, what happened then?
At that time, I tied him up.
While still holding him at gunpoint?
Well, in between tying and yes. Yeah.
All right, after you tied them up, what occurred?
Well, they started complaining about being tied up, and I re-loosened the bonds a couple of times, tried to make Mr. Otero as comfortable as I could. Apparently,
what was shocking was that he was still trying to present himself best way he could, almost taking pride in what he did. Edmund Kemper's confession tapes aren't just disturbing. They're profoundly psychological. Unlike many killers who seek to avoid responsibility, Kemper spoke about his crimes with startling clarity, even self-reflection.
When someone abandons himself to being a victim, he's going to have to be one.
He wasn't just confessing to murders. He was analyzing them, as if he were a psychologist examining his own twisted behavior.
I'm saying I've wanted to kill my mother since I was 8 years old, and I'm not proud of that. It started with surrogates at a non-human level. Physical objects, my possessions, other people's, destruction of things that are cared about.
But the why wasn't simple. It never is with Kemper. His words were chillingly rational, almost too rational for someone who had just murdered 10 people. He dissected his urge to kill as though it were a scientific experiment, trying to understand what had gone wrong inside him.
Mountain. I was literally on top of a mountain when it happened. And I sensed everybody in the world just stopping what they were doing, turning around, saw what I did, and are coming to get me. And I
But
knew
there's something even more unsettling than his calm recounting: his pride. Kemper didn't just admit to the murders. He owned them unapologetically.
At age 15, I would have killed until they gunned me down. I wouldn't have been able to reason my way out of it. I was scared to death, and I was violent. I felt my back hit that wall. I was the rabbit.
It's almost as if he enjoyed explaining how simple it was for him to take lives, to overpower those who trusted him. And the cold, almost amused tone in his voice only amplifies the horror of it all.
These are the ones. Now, would you get in the car with this man? Huh?
Kemper's confessions were chilling not because they were full of rage, but because they were full of understanding. His self-awareness is as unsettling as the murders themselves. Israel Keyes was not like the others. He didn't confess because he had to. He confessed because he wanted to, on his terms.
And beyond that, like I say, anything prior to the couriers we can talk about, but probably not till find out what happens with this stuff.
No, that's fair. From the moment he was arrested, Keyes exuded a terrifying calmness, unlike Bundy, who tried to charm his way out, or Kemper, who confessed with cold clarity. Keyes had a different plan altogether. He gave authorities pieces of his story, but only what he chose to reveal, keeping the most chilling details hidden. He put forth a few conditions. One was his death sentence, and other was that details will not go public. He was ready to tell, but on his terms, as he wished, and only how much he wished.
And I walked him down there, found there was like an old stool, and cable tied his hands down to the stool so he couldn't stand up, and then I had the stool backed up against the wall, and thought I had it pretty well secured. And well, I mean, it must have taken me longer than I thought, because I came out of the...
For days, Keyes sat across from detectives, offering up confessions in a calm, detached tone, laughing in between. He didn't show any remorse, guilt, even sadness over what he did. It was almost as if he were talking about a business transaction. He didn't rush to explain his motives. He didn't care about impressing anyone. He spoke as if the murderous spree he went on from Alaska to the lower 48 was nothing more than a series of decisions.
At that point, like I say, he had just reached a point where he wasn't going to cooperate no matter what. And I didn't have the Ruger 1022 on me. I had it was upstairs in the backpack. I had my 40 cal and I had a knife. And I didn't want to use the
What's
knife.
terrifying about Keyes' confession is how much he controlled the investigation. He carefully withheld details, playing with investigators like puppets. They push him for more, but he only gave them enough to remain a step ahead. At times, it felt like he was the one interrogating them, testing how much they could guess and how much they were willing to dig.
That or using the phone or anything like that?
Well, I cut the phone lines outside the house.
Oh, okay.
I cut the phone lines as soon as I picked the house, because usually if there's an alarm system, it'll trigger the alarm, and
Oh, I see. So you could watch and see.
Right. So I cut the phone lines, and like I said, the neighbor next door.
It was a calculated performance. For someone who'd spent years planning his crimes, Keyes' confession wasn't about coming clean. It was about maintaining power, even in captivity. What's most chilling isn't just the acts they committed. It's the detached way in which they spoke about them, the coldness, the manipulation, and the utter lack of remorse. It's as if the crimes themselves were just another part of their calculating plans, carried out with precision and purpose. These tapes are not just glimpses into their guilt, but windows into the mind of evil, and what we see is more terrifying than we could ever imagine. Thank you for watching Prison Stories. Stay tuned for more chilling stories. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications.